Hey guys, Veebat here with another V Plays, and we're going to try something a little bit different today because this isn't so much a review, but more of a bomber styles video. So first thing you'll see is the B-17G sitting here at tier 6, but somebody brought this up and I actually didn't even realize it. I actually have all tier 6 bombers that are available in the game right now. That includes the B-17G that we're looking at now, the PE-2M82, which is the Russian dive bomber, the American A-26B, arguably a pseudo-attack aircraft, and then the Dornier 217M. And each one of these aircraft play drastically different from one another when you talk about being a bomber pilot. Now, for the rest of us, we're like, a bomber's a bomber. I shoot them down. They fly around. They capture zones. But for the bomber pilots out there, each one of these has so much nuance inside of their play style that their play style that I feel as though it deserved a little bit of time taking a look at each one of these aircraft. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so starting out here, we're going to hop into the Dornier 217M, the German bomber, and German bombers typically like to fly at higher altitude. They carry a fairly impressive bomb load, but their tail gunner arrangement's it's not great, it's not bad, it's just a tail gunner, and it gets a little bit better as time goes on, but we actually get 8 individual drops of 500-pound bombs or 250-kilogram bombs with enough damage to potentially take out a site each one of these sections of ground targets with a single bomb. But then these special sites, we end up dropping 4, and then I dropped one for good measure on that AA site and then also on that tent facility. But those series of the 4 bombs was enough to be able to take out that main special site as it were. And then we got a little bit more altitude. It's always important to note that a bomber's accuracy, if you were to picture like a cone coming out from the bottom of the aircraft, that is essentially your accuracy of the bomb drops. So as you get higher up, that cone makes a bigger circle on the ground, right? That means that your spread is going to increase, but the lower you are, the more accurate your bombs are going to be, but it's also going to open you up to hostile fire. I try not to stay too high in a lot of these aircraft because then you start to lose engine speed, and usually I'm not fighting the reload time as much as I'm fighting getting to the next target set. Now, I put a lot of time into this aircraft, and as you can see by the marks on the tail here, but usually operating at higher altitude is going to allow you to be able to get to the next zone with relatively limited incoming fire, but then you can drop the nose down to get that accuracy back and that airspeed as we come blitzing in. Now we're a little bit higher for this run, and you'll see where we have a little bit of a loss of accuracy as a result of this run-in. So we're dropping a single bomb on each one of those AA facilities. We dropped 4 on that center site yet again. We're going to drop a single one on that tent facility and another one on that AA site. Now we're not too high, but we're just at the edge of our envelope, and I think you can all agree that there was pretty good bomb placement there, but you'll note we didn't get a lot of capture because we didn't destroy the center facility, which is unfortunate. I'm just getting a little fancy now doing a roll, trying to show off as I'm a little bit bored at this point, waiting for the bombs to come back and trying to figure out what my next run-in's going to be and what maybe I should have done better on that attack run. But fortunately, the reload isn't too bad on this aircraft. It is the highest of all the aircraft I think we're featuring today, if I'm not mistaken. The B-17 might be... No, the B-17's actually less. I think I got it down to like 55 seconds, but it is specialized. Still on reload. Now, realizing 1, that I'm still on reload, and 2, that I'm a little bit anxious and want to get in there before a lot of the enemy aircraft start destroying my allies, I do an underturn here and actually come up from underneath, which allows me to be able to get up a bit of speed in the dive, and now I'm coming in at a much lower altitude, ensuring that these rounds or bombs are actually going to make contact on the target. and you can see how much smaller the air circle is on these bomb drops, and I'm sure that there's actually an actual radius where these will drop. I think this is just a reticle view that we get for this, but we could have either hit V, or in my case, I just decided to drop the last 2 bombs in order to get that reload started, but I think you guys kind of get the gist here. We took both of the military facilities, and we end up getting air supremacy fairly early in this battle, and we pretty much can dominate the fight because nobody can get up to this altitude to really mess with us. There are a few heavies out there, but they just aren't focusing down my airframes. So anyways, let's hop into the next airframe. Alright, next up we're taking out what's probably my favorite bomber, and that is going to be the B-17, the B-17G in particular, and we get carpet bombing with this aircraft, which is much different than the DOE 217, which gets to drop 8 individual bombs. Sure, we get 16 of these 500-pound bombs, but we have to drop them in 2 strips, so I usually line up 2 targets, as you see here, 1 target, 2 target, and we're hammering down the boost to get good spread, and now we're dropping the next set, and we're actually going to throw a little bit onto that AA site, and this is a highly contested zone, and the B-17 Flying Fortress is just that. It's a fortress. This thing is riddled with 50 cal machine guns and turrets, which allows us to be able to put quite a bit of damage on the enemy while at the same time taking a lot of hits. So that player in the boomerang made a drastic mistake, which allowed us to be able to kill that aircraft, and our team was able to flip the zone. The reload time is very short on this, but that's mostly due to the specialization. When I say it's really short, I'm saying it's really short compared to a normal B-17G that isn't specialized. We really have this thing kicked up a notch with an increase or a decrease on the reload time, so essentially getting the bombs back really quickly. So we're already to the next site, and we're pretty much ready to drop again. Now I miscalculated. I thought there was actually going to be a second site just north of the site that you can see is burning just to the right of my reticle. So I actually start the drop a little bit early here, but we are hammering down the boost, and we're actually at mid altitude now. I've heard people tell me, you're bombing too low. I disagree. I don't think I'm bombing too low. I think I'm bombing right where I need to be, because this aircraft has the ability to do this. This is a P-40, essentially an intercept aircraft meant to go after and attack bombers or defend bombers in most cases, because usually the Allies were on the offensive. But we still had our bombs left. We managed to kill an aircraft in the zone, and now I'm actually just toying with these boomerangs, trying to keep them inside my gun range, but at the same time keeping them at a little bit of arm's reach so that way they can't get their guns on me. And now we're firing from the side, and we have the ability to get 550 cals on target right now, and we're just decimating that airframe, and it allowed us to be able to flip the zone yet again. And now here's that poor P-40 actually used that spot to get a respawn and is vectoring in on my aircraft, and we're just unloading into him right now, and he definitely doesn't want to be here. We've taken out his engine, and he's just getting out of my range of fire. And now I actually have an enemy PE-2 using his forward firing cannon to try and do some damage to me, but yet again, here we are not only surviving the incoming damage, but also dishing out some more damage on the enemy aircraft and causing him to divert away. So the B-17 Flying Fortress, major change from the DOE 217M, and even though we're going to be taken out here, we weren't in a zone, and we're going to be able to respawn, and we managed to capture 2 zones and put a lot of hurt into a bunch of the enemy aircraft that came up to meet us. So what is a B-17 good for? Tanking a lot of damage and being able to go in and take out some pretty heavily armored targets with those carpet bomb runs. So that's the way I like to play this type of an airframe, but this isn't the only one. Let's go ahead and dip into the P-2. Alright, so here we are in the P-2 and M82, and I know that we just did a review of this aircraft about a week ago, I think, but The dive bombing tactic is going to be very different from what we've seen with the past two aircraft. The past two aircraft don't have the ability to drop at extreme angles, so they actually have to stay straight and level, and then they pretty much drop in bomb reticle mode. You can do that in this airframe, but you'll see as we're diving in here, we're getting a lot of airspeed. We're diving through the enemy defense fighters. They got to really try and give chase on us, but we're able to offload those bombs very quickly, get up to high airspeed, and look at the maneuverability. We're a much smaller bomber as well, which means we have less hit points, but now we're climbing up to altitude yet again. The boost is coming back fairly quickly as well due to what we've rolled for this airframe's boost mechanics, and the bombs reload that much faster. Now we only get 4 of these opposed to the 8 on the Do 217M, and of course opposed to the 16 that you see on the B17, but we're able to re-attack and do these run-ins. So what this is really good at is flipping zones that your team is kind of already contesting and getting in there and being that quick, okay, we just flip that last little bit of that base, or the initial strike to kind of soften up that target for your allies. Working with a teammate actually might work out fairly effectively here, especially a heavy that can go in and kill maybe a couple of the air defense fighters while you are vectoring in and dropping bombs on some of the key targets. Now, we really don't want to get caught out by enemy aircraft, but fortunately with new game mechanics, we have the ability to call help in, which is keeping that heavy off of our airframe for the time being. Now, I'm nosing over, I'm using that airspeed, and while this isn't a true dive, like a vertical dive on the target, it is allowing me to be able to get up to really high airspeeds, drop these munitions effectively on the target. We dropped all 4 on that site because there really wasn't much left to go after here, but unfortunately one of our friendly ally aircraft died in the zone, which caused us to lose some of the capture, but now we just got it back. Now, we are pretty much free and clear for the most part. We've already captured 3 of the zones, and I'm probably going to end up going after that garrison, I believe, but you can see we still have the ability to get some forward fire off of this 20mm, which is something that you wouldn't expect to see with the previous 2 airframes. And of course we're going to come in and do another bombing run on this other garrison, and you see how quickly we can get those munitions back up, how quickly we're able to get back up to altitude, as well as get a bunch of our boost energy back. So as long as you're patient, you wait until you're already over the site. A lot of people dive just a little bit too early. Once I hit the edge of the ring, typically I start to dive because that's when the air defense aircraft are going to start vectoring in on your position. So now's the time to get that speed up so it makes you a harder target. We're dropping 1 round on each one of these sites, and even though this is a little bit out of our way, we do have the ability to drop on it fairly easily. Because I've done so much low altitude bombing, that's pretty intuitive to me to be able to drop like that. And now we are vectoring out of the zone, climbing as we're doing this, that way we can get back into that optimum altitude for our engine power, and we're just diverting from the rest of the aircraft in this zone. Tail gunner is really just going to be a deterrence, but our teammates were able to finish off what was left of the area. So like I said, a very good support aircraft to be able to provide some more ground target damage to your allies who are probably going to take out another aircraft. So this pretty much is how this game goes for the rest of the match. We keep going to each one of these sectors, usually one that isn't highly contested, and we drop our bombs, we leave the area, and if we have to, we double back, but for the most part we just keep leapfrogging zone to zone. So that's typically how I fly a dive bomber. Now we have 1 left. This one's a premium aircraft, and yes, it's the American A-26B. So let's take a look at that airframe and how I typically fly that aircraft. Alright, so this is going to be a good clip for the way I like to play my A-26. I typically am flying around 5,000 feet. We can hop into the bomb reticle view. This can drop at a little bit of a dive, but not nearly as steep as the PE2. So we're coming in here fast. This does drop in small carpet clusters of 4 100-pound bombs. So you're getting a good spread on this, so you got to drop just a little bit early, just like you would with the B-17. But now that we dropped our munitions, we actually have 650 cals in the nose, And you can see here we're actually using this aircraft much like an attack airframe. And while it isn't easy to get these guns on target, if you can, you're able to do things like that. Now the rest of this match doesn't go really well for us. We end up losing this because our team kind of split which targets we were going after. We tried to capture all 4 of these zones at one time, and inevitably somebody thinks that the airfield is more important than a military facility or a command center, so I digress. Let's go to another battle where things are a little bit more normal, because I love being able to shoot down an air defense aircraft with this plane, but it doesn't always happen, so let's just get to something that's a little bit more in tune with reality. So this is going to be a little bit more traditional way I play the A-26, and typically I'm getting a little bit low. Now bear in mind that whenever I'm going after a mining facility, it's always a good idea to get low. Even if your bomber's not really that much of a low altitude bomber, if you are going to be faced with going after a critical zone like this, taking the AA fire that comes out of this type of a site is just horrible. There's so much going on here, but we can still hop into reticle view even at 1500 feet. We drop 1 set here, 2 sets here, and then the 4th set right there on that target. Now, we didn't kill everything at all. That's not what was going on here, but we do have like a 35-second reload on this aircraft, so I'm going to go ahead and nose this thing over and play a little bit of attack run here. Not recommended, but I'm waiting for the reload. Nobody's here, and getting this site is important enough that it doesn't hurt to go ahead and do this. I wish that they would allow you to be able to put on the wing-mounted 50s, because there is a version of this with another 8 50s mounted in the wings, and there's actually an 8 stack of 50s that they had equipped in the nose as well. Now, fortunately for me, my team was able to finish off the zone, but we have a ton of boost in our boost pool, so I'm going to go ahead and hammer down the throttle, tip that nose up, and just try and get that altitude back. Now, I'm going to go and hit the peripheral sites. There's no reason for me to really go to the airfield, but I'm going to get myself up to a higher altitude. And kind of like we did with the DOE 217M, we're going to use the altitude to kind of get us out of the danger zone. Then we can dip the nose to get that power back. We're essentially putting money in our energy piggy bank right now, and we're going to cash it in when we start coming in to attack the zone. So as we're tipping the nose over, we're getting a little bit more acceleration out of the dive, and then we're going to level off, hop into the gun site or into the bomb site reticle, and I'm just going to do a really quick and dirty pass over to this site. Couple of bombs there. We do have some AA fire inbound on the aircraft, but that's alright. We are going to be maneuvering the whole time, and those 50 cal turrets do have the ability to fire slightly in front of the aircraft. Throwing a few rounds at the bow fighter here, but we know that we're not going to be able to stick with him. I was hoping he would just stay on my ally there, so then I would have some time to get guns on target, but totally unnecessary. We're actually going to vacate the area. We traded a lot of our altitude for some of that airspeed, and I'm just going to go ahead and climb back up and see what I can do to help my team out to maybe capture the center site on my way to go and get the military facility, because again, this is a really good support airframe and people really don't expect the 50 cals in the nose. What I really like to use these for is actually going after other bombers that are contesting my zone, because I'm going to have a much better capability to take them out than they will me, but they'll have a much better capability of being able to flip the zone typically, so that's really where the decision comes in. This thing sometimes plays like a PE2, the way you kind of attack other aircraft sometimes, but since you have to drop in the bomb reticle mode, it feels a little bit more like you're a cross between a B-17 and a DOE 217M. But again, your mileage may vary, my tactics might not be your tactics. I don't want to stay in this zone, I'm just going to keep hammering through. Unfortunately, my team's having a really tough time dogfighting in the center, but this is a good indicator that just because you're not in a turn fighter on this map with an airfield in the middle doesn't mean that it isn't important to come in here and be the support aircraft working on the periphery, because somebody's got to go and capture these sites. We're building our airspeed again. We're getting into the reticle mode here, dropping on that site just a few bombs, and then we're actually going to spread 2 sets here on an already damaged center site and dropping a few munitions here. Now we're going to reload really quick. You see it's actually, I think it was actually 32 seconds, so we should be up and ready to go in a minute here, or in 30 seconds rather. And we're going to go ahead and use these 50 cals to go after this PE2, since he seems to be one of the priority threats for us. I am concerned that he may flip this site if I leave him to his own devices. He is getting a little bit of distance on us, so I'm going to have to come back to him in a second. Don't you worry, I'll come back for you, buddy. But I do have my bombs back, and there's a lot of sites here that are already kind of pre-damaged. That was actually the one site that we had dropped on earlier, and we didn't even need to do that. So now that we've taken this site, we've got both of the mining plants, and since that thing counts as 2 sites, we're pretty much looking at a 5-to-2 ratio right now, as long as we can keep that timer ticking. But this is really what I wanted to show you, as we kind of stayed on this airframe longer than we did the others, is the ability to vector in and take out another bomber aircraft, because the PE2, while it is fairly fast, it is going to find itself running out of boost from time to time, and we are able to stick on him fairly well, especially with his tail taken out here. And now that we've taken him out, we know that we are in a much better place to be able to keep this mining plant in our control. And these 50 cals, here's a really good example of how far off the side of the airframe you can actually fire these tail gunners, because we are almost firing at them from the exact side of the airframe. And now we can kind of keep the enemy inside of our arm's reach and kill a heavy fighter that tries to chase us down with this tier 6 heavy, or this tier 6 bomber rather. Anyways, let's go ahead and get back to the hangar. Alright, so that's it. We've got all 4 of them right here. I'm not sure which one you guys thought was your favorite based on the gameplay or based on the style of play, but really this does kind of set the stage for the rest of these lines, and potentially the rest of the line for the Americans, I think. I'm not sure what's coming. I know that there's supposed to be a B-29 coming as the tier 8, but the tier 9 and 10 are still a big question mark. I'm speculating flying wings, but who knows at this point. They've kind of alluded to it a little bit. I'd love to see something big like a flying wing, but if they stick with the Fortress bomber style, the B-17D, the B-17G, and the B-32 are very much the tanky carpet bombing style aircraft. So if you're into that, the Americans are probably going to be your best bet. The Soviets, they are dive bombers all the way up until tier 10. At tier 10, they change a bit. And they become more of your traditional high-speed, maybe mid to low altitude bomber with some really good tail gunners, because the Su-10 can't drop in the same type of steep angles. In fact, I'd say that the Su-10 probably plays a little bit more like an A-26, I think, in the bomb drop type of way that you do the bomb drops with it, but you get 8 of them, and you get a really good tail gunner, which is reminiscent of this airframe as well. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but those are my thoughts. The DOE 217, while as you progress through the line, the 288A, the 288C are pretty much just tier 7 and tier 8 versions of the DOE 217M, kind of high altitude, can drop 8 individual very choice bombs. The 287 and the EF-131 at tier 9 and 10, they are going to fly at higher altitude, higher speed, really good tail gunner, but it's going to drop 4 like nukes, like the biggest bombs in the game. It carries 4 of them, and they reload fairly quickly. So with that, it still plays the same way as the DOE 217M. You're still going to be high altitude, relatively high speed, but you're actually going to get a more robust tail gunner. It's just that you're not going to be dropping 8 individual bombs, you're going to be dropping 4 mega bombs. And they actually come back pretty quick, especially with the 131. So this is a good way to kind of determine which line you think you're going to enjoy most. So hopefully this helped you guys make your decision as you are venturing into the bomber realm as to what type of bomber pilot you think you may be. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. A little bit longer this time, slightly different format. Love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Just like a soldier.